Today we are looking at STP Phase 2, so single touch payroll. So some people know more than others, but hopefully today I'm not going to go into great detail about the ATO's requirements. I've got some useful links at the end of this slide that we'll provide to you, but more from a stage perspective of how you're going to tackle it in your setup. So we're going to look at, just briefly, what is STP Phase 2, what's changing and what's not changing, when do you need to start reporting to the ATO, configuring your setup, which involves looking at your STP companies, employees, pays, deductions and fringes for Phase 2. And then, like I said, some useful links at the end of this for extra resources. So, what is STP Phase 2? It really is just an expansion of the original single touch payroll. It's just additional reporting. So what's changing? There's going to be employment conditions reported. So you've got your employment basis, full-time, part-time, casual, that needs to be reported now. There's tax treatment codes, just to give the ATO more information, and cessation types for when people are terminating. There's further reporting on child support and income types, and if applicable, country codes. So country codes affect working holiday makers and foreign employees. Disaggregation of gross is the biggest one that's going to affect our customers. Is the ATO now wants us to break that gross wages down into all the different classifications. So bonuses and commissions and directors' fees and paid leave, salary sacrifice, overtime, allowances. They want to know it all. So it's no longer just gross wages. We actually need to go through all your list of pays and nominate what type of pay. Also, salary sacrifice is changing a little. You now need to report gross income, ordinary wages no longer is reduced for salary sacrifice. I think that was optional before. It's no longer an option. Ordinary earnings is the full gross. So if you've got 100,000 gross with a 20,000 salary sacrifice, ordinary time earnings must be the full 100,000 as an example to put some numbers to it. Lump sums, there's some additional reporting around lump sum E. If you ever use that, you now have the option to the ability to record a year against each one. And the whole idea is to reduce the amount of additional reporting that you do. The aim is to try and collect everything that you report to government agencies all in the one file. So instead of doing like separate certificates for when an employee leaves, the idea is to have all of that information in the one file. No more separation certificates, no more reporting to other government agencies and separate reporting. It's having everything to do with payroll, to do with your employees, all in the one file. So what's not changing? The way that you submit the ATO. Submit to the ATO. So you're still going to log into the STP portal, you're still going to upload your files in there, just like you normally do. So once you do your setup of the various items that I'm going to show you next, once it's all set up and you've done some testing to make sure you're happy with it, nothing changes. You're just generating your file and submitting it each pay. So the due dates for the files, it's still the pay event. The types of payments that you're reporting, it's your payroll, tax and super, nothing's changing there, and you still need to do your final file at the end of the year. So, when do you need to start reporting? So, typical of the ATO, they drop these things on us and think that it's super simple, and when they originally introduced it last year and finally passed it through all its approvals. Basically, they said that it was going to make it effective from the 1st of January this year, but I don't know any software that was actually ready by the 1st of January. They then gave an extension basically to everybody to the 1st of July. And certainly every software package that I deal with is still not ready. I haven't seen any of them actually introduce their STP Phase 2 yet, other than Sage. So CRE is now available. Version 22.1, you will need to upgrade to that version to get the new fields because it is quite a few changes. So Thrive will have most likely been in touch with someone in your organisation already to organise an upgrade. As soon as that upgrade is done, then you'll then have the fields I'm going to show you on the next few slides. And you need to start moving on getting everything set up. Now, having said that, the ATO has granted a blanket extension for all of Sage customers or Sage CRE customers to 1st of November. So you've actually got some extra time to get all your setup and testing done. You don't have to rush into it. If your upgrade is going to be a little bit more tricky and needs extra time, there's no panic. There's time to get it all done and be ready to go by the 1st of November. Keep in mind that if you do go live after the 1st of July, if you delay that start, then there is a little bit of work that needs to be done just to update the check records that you've already posted for the new financial year. There's a couple of extra new fields on there, and it's something that Thrive can help you to update those records. Sage have made them something that are easily updatable just using Microsoft Access. So yeah, not a little bit of extra work, but not a lot of extra work. So what do we need to do to get ready, to get your payroll system ready for STP 2? The first thing is to configure your single touch payroll company or companies. It's through the payroll setup single touch payroll companies menu. And basically all it is right in the middle here, you've got this Phase 2 and Phase 1, it's a drop down box. All you do is just drop the box down to Phase 2 when you're ready to go. Or even if you want to do some testing. So keep using Phase 1. You can pays, deductions, fringes, employees with the extra fields. STP Phase 1 won't be affected by that additional setup. So what you can do is work your way through, set up the new fields and get them ready, process some payrolls, and then change your company over to Phase 2, generate a test file, and just check your figures in there to make sure you're happy with how you've set it up. So again, if you want any help with that process, Thrive, we're here to help you, give you some guidance on doing it. So as you can see, really easy to swap your company over. This switch here simply changes the format of the STP file that Sage outputs when you select that generate single touch payroll file.
Pam, can I just ask, is there something we need to update there in that previous BMS ID? Is that relevant to switching over to Phase 2?
Yeah, it's not going to be relevant for people continuing to use Sage.
Okay.
It is only relevant if you've had a change of software. So the ATO have realised that it's been problematic for people who have been changing payroll systems who want to bring in year-to-date earnings for their employees. And if they do, they suddenly find their employees have duplicated their year-to-date earnings on their income statements because they've got one from the old payroll system and then the new payroll system has the same earnings on it year-to-date and suddenly their income has doubled. So the idea is that they can now use the BMS ID from their previous payroll system and it just makes it a lot cleaner. People can bring in year-to-date earnings and their pay slips make a bit more sense. And the ATO now can match them up.
Perfect, thank you.
Awesome. So you've also need to do some configuration on your employees. So there's a few new fields that I've highlighted in the screens. The first thing is the tax treatment code. Now, for the bulk of your employees, it's going to be what you see on the screen. But there is some guidance to how to work out what that code will be in the ATO document that I've provided a link to at the end of these slides. So you'll need to do a little bit of reading and see what that tax treatment code needs to be, and then go and put that code onto your employee setup. You'll also now have an employment basis field. Hooray! A lot of our customers have a custom field for this already because they wanted to see this information. You now have a new actual standard field that you'll need to go and put this onto here. The custom field, we can't map it to your single touch payroll. You will need to go and use the new field and go and put this information there. And then perhaps you can decide to delete the custom field so you don't have duplicates. There's also the requirement now to nominate the income type. And again, for the bulk of your employees, they're going to just be salary and wages, but refer to that ATO document to see what the different income types are and to make that decision about what that should be for your employees. Now, the home host country is only an available field for applicable income types. So it's not going to be relevant if all your employees are just salary and wages. If you are reporting on working holiday makers is one of the income types that you do need to then nominate that home host country. And it's just a 2-digit country code, but again, you'll need to look up, if you do need to use it, look up what the country code needs to be. And the last thing I just included there on the second image is just in that whole idea of being able to allow transition from a previous payroll system to a new one. Not only, can you match up that payroll company, but you've now also got the previous payroll ID. So if you're moving from one system to another, you can store the previous payroll ID. So not so relevant for the people continuing to use Sage, but I guess if you are ever moving on to another payroll system, perhaps Definitive or something else in future, we have the ability to carry all the figures forward now. So once you've done your employees, you then need to configure your pays. And this is where this whole disaggregation of gross kicks in. You can see it's no longer simple. It's not just gross. You have a great big long list of different fields there, different classifications there that you need to pick one that applies to your pay. So have a read of the document if you're not sure about any of them. Just familiarize yourself. Also the help menu, they've put some thought into the help menu to explain each of these. If you do pick allowance other, that is the one case where you still need to go into the old STP options screen under the tools menu. Basically, we've moved away from the need for so many formulas. We had to, when STP Phase 1, the first one came out, a lot of customers needed a lot of formulas written to be able to produce the figures on their STP file. With these STP classifications now being available on the Pays, Deductions and Fringe records, the need for those formulas greatly goes away. But one area where it may still exist is this allowance other. You still need to go in and nominate all your other allowances. So again, just do a bit of reading on it. If you have any questions, you're welcome to shoot an email up to our help desk and we'll give you some help. So deductions now also need a classification. You can see the list is a lot shorter, thank goodness. And remember, it's only the deductions with a type of normal. So deduct type normal, because you've got your banking ones in there and obviously they don't need to see the reporting on the banking. And finally, you've got your configuration of your fringes. So the fringe records, again, depending on how your payroll's been set up and how we're using those fringe records, you might have a great big long list of fringes, and you know, it's going to be not applicable for a lot of them. Maybe they're provisions. You were using your fringe records for provisions. Obviously, the ATO don't want to know your payroll provisions, but they want to know about the super guarantee, reportable super, and reportable fringe benefits. Anything else outside of those 4 things, you would just nominate not applicable. Now, just a note here. You'll notice that RESC, the reportable super, is a field available on the pay record, the deduction record, and the fringe record. So we have a lot of variety between our customers because Sage Payroll is so highly configurable, and it's been set up uniquely for each individual customer. Some customers have a negative pay for their salary sacrifice, and then they have a fringe record as well. So if you have that, you would make sure that you only nominate the RESC on one of those records. So don't put it on both. So I'd be inclined to put it on the negative pay record, and then on the fringe record, make it not applicable. Just don't double up on it. Likewise, if you've got a deduction ID and a fringe ID that both record that salary sacrifice, just put it on the deduction ID and make the fringe ID not applicable. Okay, so just be wary of your setup and have a look at how you're set up, and any uncertainty, shoot us an email to have a chat about it. And just at the end of this slides, I've given you some links to some documents. One is a Sage document that is their year-end procedures and government forms guide. It's got some great information about it. So I'll just jump to it. This one here. It's got some great information about setting up for single touch payroll. So moving from phase 1 to phase 2 in your payroll. And it just basically takes you through a lot of the information we've just discussed. So have a look at this guide, and then also the second reference is to the ATO guide. And so I've given you a link to this one as well. Now just note, the ATO, they're constantly making updates to it. The last one when I downloaded this was the 11th of April. But there's a link here to go and see if they've updated it, got a more recent version than this. But this is where you're going to get all of your information about how to pick those codes, even just the taxation code that you've got to do, the RTXXXX. All the information's in here, particularly when it comes to the disaggregation of gross and how you're going to go and label all of those pay IDs. So work your way through this document. It's got some great information about what to include, what's not included, and what labels to use. So that's it for me. I guess I want to open the floor for any questions that anyone may have.
If you not available to go on mic, you can pop a question in the chat box there if you wish, and we can work through that question. I think Pam has been very thorough in her explanation, and obviously everyone has questions going, oh, how am I going to, work through this list and figure it out? I would suggest dumping all your pay IDs out into a spreadsheet and working your way through, adding there what you think it's going to be, and then, having a revision or get a colleague to have a revision of that before you go and start, plugging it into Sage CRE.
A great way to just drop all your pays and deductions and fringe records out into Excel is just under the inquiry menu. If you go to inquiry lists, you can list all your pays on an inquiry screen, and just add a column for the STP classification field. And so, you know, you can go through, drop that inquiry screen out into Excel and just work your way through, you know, and have a think about how you want to set it up. Or even if you want to set up all your pays through the setup menu, and then just so you can take a snapshot and review it or provide it to someone else to review it, you can then, you know, do exactly what I said, use that inquiry, drop it out with all the classifications you think are the right ones, and supply it to someone to do a review for you.
It doesn't look like anybody has any questions. So I'd like to thank you, Pam. That was a very good presentation.
Thank you. Just one more thing, for any of our really customers that have a high volume of employees. So Kathy, I can see you're sitting there. So there are a lot of fields to add onto your employee setup. And so you might be sitting there thinking, oh my God, this is going to be enormously time consuming. We can help you. We can use Microsoft Access. Sage have, you know, made sure that all of these new fields are updatable using Access. So if you wanted to drop your employees out into, again, just run an inquiry on your non-terminated employees, drop them all out into Excel, and then work your way through and just put the fields, because a lot of them you can just copy and paste down, like the classifications and the tax treatment codes and things. So if you want to get it all ready in a spreadsheet, we can give you a hand to then upload that using Access back into your database. So you're not sitting there one by one going through each employee, which can be very time consuming.
Yeah, I'll just get my head around it. I'll go through all the documents that you sent and yeah, get started as soon as we've got our upgrade.
Excellent.
And just another reminder to everybody, if we haven't reached out to you about getting your Sage CRE upgraded, please send it an email through to help@thrivetech.com.au, and that way we won't miss upgrading you.
Yeah. And Lauren, you're online with us, aren't you?
Yep, I'm here.
I'll give you a copy of these slides and you'll send them out to everybody.
Yep, definitely will.
Awesome. So if anyone doesn't get a copy of the slide, if we haven't got you registered on the Lunch and Learn and you don't get a copy, just shoot an email off to our help desk, help@thrivetech.com.au, and just request a copy of them if they somehow don't come to you, and we'll just shoot you off a copy. All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pam. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Bye.
Bye now.
Yeah.